webinar.
Thank you very much. Welcome you all. I'm trying to share my presentation first. Good. Okay. Yes, very good. Can you see the slides?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much. So just two sentences about me before the presentation. I work at the University of Veterinary Medicine, Budapest, at the Department of Veterinary Forensics and Economics. In Hungary, this is the only veterinary faculty university. And personally, I deal with mainly the economic and management issues of the veterinary profession, the herd health management, and the practice management. And this is my original and core research area, the economic aspects, the production impact of herd health problems on dairy cattle farms. So thank you very much for the invitation to give this presentation. The length of the presentation would be 40 minutes, and of course after the presentation we have chance to discuss and to raise questions. So I have a lot of slides. I'm trying to emphasize the more important things, if it works. First of all the animal farms, including the dairy cattle farms, are enterprises, so their ultimate aim is to increase the profit. So if the veterinarians and the herd health management cannot play a role in increasing the profit, the profitableness of the farms, the farmers can say that their activity, the veterinarian's activity, is not good enough. But first of all, how to increase the profit in the dairy cattle farms? The farm management, in my opinion, is one of the most, maybe the most important aspect. The good management can improve a lot of the farm, the dairy cattle farm's profitability. Of course, the salaries for the good farm management are quite high, but in my opinion, it's worth it. The feeding strategy is very important, because the good feeding strategy, because the largest part of the production costs is stemming from the feeding. Housing system, good housing conditions. Of course, within the European Union, the agricultural subsidies can help a lot in this regard. And our topic is the herd health management, to improve the herd health management. And from a financial point of view, the prevention is always cheaper and most rewarding than the curation when the problems already arose. And I would like to highlight this phrase, the cost optimization instead of cost minimization. So it means that we have to take into account the return on investment as regards to the herd health management, not just cutting the cost, just half the drug cost, because we can lose much more after cost cutting because of the decreasing income caused by the herd health problems. So the animal health, the animal diseases can be regarded as a very, very important risk factors for the herd profitability. And of course, we have to diminish, we have to reduce the losses caused by the herd level diseases. That's why since the 1980s, there was a shift in the herd health management from medication to prevention, preventive protocols, and from animal level to herd level. So we treat the dairy units as a as a whole, and we try to administer a good herd health management for the entire population, cattle co-population. So as a consequence, there was and there is still a greater demand for the so-called production-oriented herd health management and the economic analysis of herd health measures programs. I would like to present some techniques which can help in this regard, which can help the farmers and the veterinarians in this regard. What are the major herd level diseases causing the largest financial losses in the dairy cattle units? First of all, the mastitis, the reproductive disorders, the lameness, and there are other diseases, primarily the metabolic diseases and the different kinds of contagious diseases. Of course, there are overlappings, and the metabolic diseases and the contagious diseases can cause mastitis or reproductive failures, even lameness. So, but basically, what we can express in monetary values, the losses caused by the mastitis, the reproductive disorders, and the lameness on herd level. So we are focusing on these diseases. I would like to start with the mastitis. If we look at the sources of financial losses due to the mastitis cases on herd level, we have three major sources of financial losses. The first is the reduced milk receipts. The second one is the premature disposal, the early culling due to mastitis, and the treatment cost. The other has treatment cost. Reduced milk receipts consists of the decreased milk production and the lowered milk quality. This is mainly because of the subclinical mastitis. The easiest way and the most practical way to detect the subclinical mastitis to measure the somatic cell count. As the somatic cell count increases, the milk production, the daily milk yield will decrease. So it causes a huge losses from a financial point of view. I will give you some practical examples. The lower milk quality is related to this as well, because many milk processing plants pay an extra bonus, a premium for the milk having a somatic cell count less than 100,000 SCC or even 50,000 SCC. So the better the quality of the milk is, the higher the income the farmers can achieve. The clinical mastitis, in practice, usually we just treat the clinical mastitis cases or mastitic cases. Of course, we usually use antibiotics to have a successful treatment. And it means that for a couple of days, the milk won't be fit for human consumption. That's why the milk must be discarded, have to be discarded, and these milk receipts will be lost. The treatment cost include the drug cost. This is very self-evident for everyone. But to be honest, this is the smallest part of the losses caused by the mastitis. But it's very visible. There is an invoice bill about this drug cost, so it's easily detectable. The veterinary fee and the farmer's extra labor. The farmer's extra labor is the opportunity cost of the farmers or the employee's time, which could have been devoted to other activities generating profit instead of treating, grouping, separating the cows having mastitis. I would like to show you the freshest Hungarian data. from March 2024. This is the distribution and milk production of the Hungarian milking cow population according to SCC. So this is the performance tested Hungarian cow population and their parameters. And as you can see in the first column, you can see the individual SCC values according to different categories, less than 100 up to more than 3 million SCC per cow. You can see the milking cow number according to the different categories. This is the total milking cow number here in Hungary, which is performance tested, 150,000 around. And you can see the daily milk production. I would like you to draw your attention to this column, the daily milk yield according to the different SCC categories. And you can see the trend as the SCC increases, the milk yield decreases in parallel. Yes, from more than 37 kilograms milk yield, daily milk yield, to less than 30 kilograms daily milk yield. If we look at, if we compare the categories, the different SCC categories as regards to the daily milk yield, we can calculate the reduction in the daily milk production. And if we take into account the 100,000 SCC threshold, we can say that all the cows which have a milk production with more than 100 SCC compared to those cows having an SCC less than 100,000, they will suffer almost 1 kilogram reduction in the daily milk yield every day. That's a quite large number, especially from a financial point of view. I put here the other categories, other threshold 400,000 SCC, because 400,000 SCC is the limit for the raw milk to become fit, being fit for human consumption. But as you can see, over 100,000 SCC, the daily milk yield starts to decrease, and the farmer will suffer a lot of economic losses. So we can say, even if we cannot detect any pathogenic agent, that over 100,000 SCC, the cow must have a sort of subclinical mastitis. You can see on national level, this is the national level means on these losses are calculated, are estimated for the entire Hungarian dairy cow population. And maybe this column is more important than this one, over 100,000 SCC. You can see the losses, the average estimated losses in euros. It means around 150 euros per cow per year, and on national level, more than 45 million euros losses due to the decrease in milk production caused by subclinical mastitis in Hungary a year. This is another, this is a graph showing the relationship between specific under-health drug cost and milk sales. We surveyed 3 different herds, herd A, B, and C. This was a Hungarian survey. And we calculated the milk sales per cow per year on a yearly basis. You can see the pink dots. I draw the lines between the dots otherwise because it's more visible. But you can see the 3 dots. This is the milk sales per cow per year. And the dark blue dots showing us the specific under-house drug cost in Hungarian forints per liter per year. That's why the numbers are so small. The specific under-house drug cost stand for those drug costs which are devoted to treat the other has problems, only that part of the total drug cost on these farms. And the relationship, if we just take into consideration these two parameters, two farm parameters indicators, we can say that the best under-house management can be seen in farm B, on farm B. Why? Because the specific under-house cost is relatively the lowest, but the milk sales, the raw milk sales are the highest. And in herd C, you can see the milk sales per cow per year is the lowest. At the same time, the specific under-house cost in Hungarian forints per liter per year are the highest. So on farm C, there is an under-house problem, or must be. If we calculate the return indices in the third in the three surveyed herds, I would like to emphasize this data: 70 liters milk per cow per year. So it means if the mastitic cows produce an extra, after a successful treatment, an extra 70 liters milk per cow per year, the specific under-house drug cost will be covered. If we produce more, it is already beneficial to the farmers. This is a model Hungarian dairy farm showing us the annual losses due to mastitis based on previous Hungarian farm surveys. The model Hungarian farms means a dairy farm with 1,000 cows. Just a side note, the average herd, dairy cattle herd size here in Hungary now is around 470 cows per farm. So it's a quite large number. This is the average, and we have a lot of farms over 1,000 cows. And you can see the annual losses due to mastitis on a yearly basis. The reduced milk receipts, the treatments was the cost of premature disposal, early culling due to mastitis, and the total annual losses in euros are estimated to be more than 135 euros a year. On herd level, it means because we have 1,000 cows, more than 136,000 euros on herd level. These are the estimated costs. Of course, it doesn't mean that all these costs are avoidable or can be avoided. It's impossible in practice, but it shows us the size of the problem expressed in monetary values. And this is the distribution of annual losses due to mastitis. As you can see, the largest part of the losses caused by mastitis stems from the reduced milk receipts. In other words, the decreased income. So this is a so-called hidden cost. Why? Because we have no bill, no invoice about these losses. The income will be reduced because of mastitis. The cost of premature disposal is responsible for about 1/3 of the total losses caused by mastitis, and the drug cost, which is very visible, we always refer to the drug cost in relation to mastitis, is accounted for less than 10% of the total estimated losses caused by mastitis. So summarily about the mastitis, we can say that here in Hungary, the estimated losses caused by mastitis a year, the annual estimated losses per cow is around 80 to 230. So if we calculate with a 150 euro per cow per year average loss, it will cover more than 5% of the total farm income, which is a quite large share. And it means that, of course, we cannot avoid all the calculated losses, all the estimated losses caused by mastitis, but if we just avoid 1/4, for example, of these losses, which is around the 40 euros, 50 euros per year per cow, you can calculate that would be a huge, huge financial improvement on the farm. In Hungary, the estimated yearly loss due to mastitis is more than 50 million euros. 50 million euros, that's quite a large number, 50 million euros, especially if we take into account the exchange rate between the euro and the forint, Hungarian forint. 2 sentences about the profitability of other HES programs, because on every farm we apply another HES program. What can we say? After introducing another HES program, the mastitis will still cause losses. We cannot avoid all the mastitis cases, but of course we should try to reduce as much as possible the share of the mastitic cases. And the implementation of the relatively easily applicable other HES programs has a more significant effect on profitableness of the farms and yields higher return than the more sophisticated, more complicated ones. What could the reason be for this? The workers has to implement the everyday routine of these other HES programs. If they cannot understand properly what to do or how to do this program properly in practice, it won't be so effective. So that could be the reason for this experience. It's a practical study about the financial impact of decreased milk production due to exclusively subclinical mastitis in German dairy herds. We surveyed 12 commercial dairy farms, usually Eastern German dairy farms, with a total of 7,500 Holstein Friesian dairy cows, and we got the same. We came to the same conclusion. As you can see, as the SCC increases, the average daily milk yield, the average milk yield per lactation will decrease. And in Germany, most of the milk processing plants, they will pay a premium if the SCC is less than 50,000. 50,000. That's why we use this category 50,000, between 50,000 and 100, and so on. So we got the same results. This is a little bit, we got the same conclusion. And as you can see, maybe it's more practical. The reduction in daily milk production according to the different SCC categories in kilograms and in percentage. As you can see, over 250 compared to the coast having an SCC less than 50,000, the daily milk production will decrease by around 18%. 18%. Yes, and in monetary values, you can see the yearly decrease in gross milk receipts in euros. You can see the number more than 560, around 65 euros per cow if the SCC is over 250 compared to the best category less than 50,000 SCC. And you can see on herd level, this is quite a big loss more than 240,000 euros. Reproductive disorders. I would like to start with the impact of the high culling rate of the cows and consequently the needful number of replacement heifers to maintain a 100 cow herd. As you can see in the first column, the co-disposal rate, yes, from 26 to 42%. It means that 42% of the cows will be replaced over a year-long period. Here in Hungary, the annual co-disposal rate is over 40%, unfortunately. And the age at first calving in months of the heifers from 22 to 30. And as you can see, if the co-disposal rate increases and the age at the same time the age at first calving also increases, we need more and more replacement heifers just to maintain the original size of the 100 cow herd. For example, if the co-disposal rate is 30%, the age at first calving average is 24 months, we need 66 replacement heifers. If the co-disposal rate is 42% and the age of first calving is 30 months, we need more than 100 replacement heifers just to maintain this herd. And this graph showing us the losses, the sources of financial losses due to reproductive disorders on herd level. So these are the major sources: longer non-optimal calving interval, the treatment cost, the premature disposal due to infertility usually, and increase in number of inseminations. As regards to the non-optimal calving interval, it consists of two sources: the decreased net milk receipts and the decreased calf sales. The treatment cost is the same. The premature disposal, we have to calculate it in the same way as we did it considering the mastitis, the early culling due to mastitis, and the increase in number of insemination. It consists of the insemination, the extra semen cost, and the farmer sex on labor. I would like to show you very shortly these aspects. So first of all, we can say there is a negative correlation between the calving interval and the milk production. So as you can see, if the calving interval increases, the annual, not the lactational, the annual milk production decreases, and the lifetime production also decreases. So from a financial point of view, the business year is a year. So that's why we have to compare every production parameters. We have to standardize every production parameter on a yearly basis. And as the calving interval increases, the annual milk production and the lifetime milk production consequently will decrease. So this is another example for this. The effect of different calving intervals on yield period. If the calving interval is 12 months, this is case 1. And if the calving interval is 40 months, this is case 2. And as you can see, even if in case of a calving interval of 40 months, the milk yield per lactation is much more than 1 year long, in the case of a 1 year long calving interval, the annual milk yield is going to be much less. And this is the point from a financial point of view, it's not worth it. How to calculate the annual milk yield based on the lactational milk production? 365, the number of days a year, should be divided by the length of the calving interval in days, and we have to multiply it by the milk yield per lactation. So, and that gives us the annual milk yield. So the non-optimal calving interval can cause a reduction in the net milk receipts and calf sales. I will show you some very short, very brief calculations. How to calculate the decreased net milk receipts. You can see if the gross milk receipts is how to calculate, first of all, the gross milk receipts. The milk yield of lactation times the milk price. So if the lactational milk yield is 9,000 kilograms, we have to multiply it by the milk price. This is 0.3 and 30 euro cents. Today, the milk price is more than 40 euro cents, but this is just an example. 9,000 times 0.3, this gives us the gross milk receipts, 2,700 euros per cow. How to calculate the net milk receipts? We have to deduct the feed costs from the gross milk receipts. The feed cost per 1 liter milk. And as you can see, this is the feed cost per 1 liter milk, times, of course, the milk yield of lactation, and this is the net milk receipt. So basically, we take into account the variable cost, and this is the gross margin of the milk production. In other words, the net milk receipts. The fixed costs are not included in this calculation. More than 1,000 euros per cow, and the annual net milk receipts can be calculated by 365 divided by the length of the calving interval, 30 most long calving interval, 391 times the net milk receipts. So this is the annual net milk receipts. It's around 1,000 euros per cow per year. Decreased calf sales. So we have to take into account the net calf receipts. The number of calves born per year should be multiplied by the margin between the calf price and the calf raising cost until the calf sales. You can see the data in euros. This is just an example. So the net calf receipts is 40 euros, and because the calf price is 100 times the calf raising cost until the calf sales is 60, and it must be multiplied by the 365 divided by the length of the calving interval on days. It's a little bit, it must be less than 40 euros. So this is a miscalculation, but the way of the calculation is correct. And one more thing, sometimes we don't take into account the cost of the extra number of inseminations. What does it mean? There is an optimal number of insemination. So the optimal number of insemination means that we have standard values, optimal values for the different fertility parameters. For example, for the services per conception. So how many services do we have to get the cows conceived? Services per conception. And usually the services per conception, the actual services per conception indicator is higher, is larger than the optimal one. So how can we calculate the optimal number of insemination on herd level? As you can see, the optimal services per conception divided by over the actual SPC times the annual number of inseminations per herd. All these numbers are registered on every dairy cattle farm, so it's quite easy to calculate this indicator. So if the optimal SPC is 2, let's assume is 2, but the actual one is 4, 2 over 4 is 0.5 times the annual number of insemination. So the total number of the insemination per year in the herd is 2,400. So the optimal number of insemination on herd level would be 1,200. But we have 2,400 100 inseminations. This is the actual number. So what is the extra cost? The margin between 2,400, the actual number of inseminations, and the optimal number of inseminations, which is 1,200, is 1,200 times the average cost per service, which is in this example is 20 euros. It's gonna be 24,000 euros. So this is the cost of the actual number of insemination on this farm. So this is this shows the same logic, but with different production parameters. The relationship between the specific reproductive cost, drug cost and progeny per cow. So in this example, we took into account the progeny, the number of calves per cow per year, yes, the pink ones, and the specific reproductive drug cost. So all those drug costs which were allocated to handle the reproductive failures problems in this herd. And we compare these two parameters, and based on these two parameters only, we can say that the best reproductive status can be observed in herd C, because the progeny is the largest, the number of calves per cow per year, and at the same time the specific reproductive drug costs are the smallest. And the worst, let's say so, the worst situation can be seen in herd A. And this is the return index, the average return index, based on the data of these 3 surveyed dairy cattle farms. So we can say that if after a successful treatment, the number of the progeny per calf on a yearly basis increases by 0.043, all the specific reproductive cost will be covered by the value of this extra calf. And this graph showing us the distribution of annual losses due to reproductive disorders. And as you can see, the largest share coming from the non-optimal calving interval, almost 60%. This is also a hidden cost. It's a reduction in the income. The cost of premature disposal is quite large, and the extra number of inseminations, the cost of extra number of insemination is still larger than the overemphasized drug cost, yes, on herd level, which is less than 6.5% on an average based on many Hungarian surveys. So summarily, we can say that the reproductive disorders causes 150 to 300 euros per cow estimated losses a year, and it means that the open day cost is between 1.5 and 3 euros, 2.5 euros on an average. So in Hungary, based on this data, we can conclude that we can state that from a financial point of view, the reproductive disorders cause larger financial losses than the mastitis. This is just a practical study which was made in 5 Hungarian dairy cattle farms. We estimated, or we quantified, the reproductive and economic impact of postpartum uterine diseases. Just some data, we examined the calving to conception interval, the services per conception, and the conception rate for the first insemination. And as you can see, we compare the reproductive parameters of the cows with retained placenta cases or uterine inflammation cases with the other ones. And you can see all these 3 parameters deteriorated a lot because of the retained placenta and the uterine inflammation. We also compared the reproductive parameters of the cows with retained placenta or uterine inflammation to the healthy ones. The healthy one means that if the cow gave birth to one live calf and was free from any postpartum uterine diseases. You can see in this case, when we just take into account the healthy cows with no problems, in other words, the parameters deteriorated even more. And that was the final step to estimate the average loss per case in cows with retained placenta cases. You can see it was around 40 euros, and the largest part of the losses came from the treatment cost, then the excess semen usage, and the days open, the longer calving interval was responsible for the smallest part in this case, and the cost goes by the uterine inflammation. You can see this loss is much more than in the retained placenta case, more than 120 euros per cow per case, and the largest part stem from the longer calving interval days open, the extra number of days open. So this is quite a large number. And I promise very briefly the lameness, the losses caused by lameness. The lameness in the dairy cattle units is very common. On an average, we can say almost 1/4 of the cows has a lameness problem on an average. And these are the sources of financial losses due to lameness: reduced milk receipts, premature disposal, longer calving interval due to lameness, reduced live body weight, the treatment cost, and the farmer's extra labor. So these are the sources of financial losses, which we can express in monetary values. The production effects of digital diseases were estimated by many researchers. This is just one example in natural parameters. It's a Dutch example, and based on those modified production parameters, these are the average annual losses owing to clinical digital diseases, lameness in Holland. Per case, 127 euros, per cow, 27 euros, but these are quite old estimations. This is a Hungarian one. We got much higher loss values per average cow per case. You can see here in Hungary the lameness is quite prevalent, unfortunately, and many times is not treated well. That's why the per case loss could be so high. And this is the distribution of annual losses due to lameness, and you can see the largest share also comes from the so-called hidden losses, the reduced milk receipts, the longer calving interval, the reduced live body weight, and the drug cost is just responsible, at least based on the Hungarian surveys, for 2% of the total loss caused by lameness. On an average, per cow per year here in Hungary, the losses due to lameness vary between 20 to 100 euros, so it's still a quite large number. I would skip the early calling because no time left. The treatment cost, I just want to show you some graphs because we fight against the antimicrobial resistance, and it could be interesting to you. So we surveyed the distribution of the average yearly drug cost by indication on many Hungarian large-scale dairy cattle farms. And as you can see, most of the drug costs which were used on the surveyed dairy cattle farms were allocated to fight against mastitis. Mastitis. The second major problem was the reproductive disorders. And this is a good sign. Around 18% of the drug costs were allocated to buy preventive products, including vaccines, and to do an efficient prevention protocol on these farms. By product groups, the same farms, you can see almost half of the drug costs came from the antibiotics and to a very little extent sulfonamides, but mainly antibiotics. Then disinfectants, that's a good sign in my opinion. On the third place, the hormones and the vaccines. But the antibiotics was responsible, the antimicrobials was responsible for almost half of the total drug cost. And as you can see, the distribution of antibiotics by indication. This graph shows this share, this distribution. The mastitis, the clinical mastitis, because we use antibiotics to treat the clinical mastitis cases successfully. That's why more than 2/3 of the antibiotics which were used on these farms were allocated to fight against mastitis. Then metritis and retained placenta cases, lameness, and for the different respiratory and digestive diseases amongst the calves, that was a quite small share. And the summary. What can we say based on this data? I would like to start with this. The returns foregone, so-called hidden losses, that is, the diminished returns due to reduced production, are responsible for the largest financial losses on the dairy cattle farms. And the subclinical diseases, from a financial point of view, cause much greater losses than the clinical cases. Just think of the higher SCC causing could cause a drastic reduction in the daily milk yield. Yes, there are differences, sometimes big differences among farms, and based on the losses caused by the different diseases, we can set up a priority list, which diseases should come first in terms of the herd health management. If a disease, for example, the mastitis, causes the largest losses on a farm, we have to focus on this, because from a financial point of view, it's much more rewarding. Yes, and of course, not all the estimated losses can be avoided, but we have to be aware of the magnitude of these losses. How to handle the herd health diseases? There are different methods. Sometimes we have to apply them in parallel. The optimization of farm management and the reduction of environmental risk factors. In my opinion, this is very important, because the farm management has an impact on every aspect of a farm, of an enterprise. High-level feeding and vaccination. High-level feeding because of its share of the total production cost and its impact on the herd health. Without a good quality feeding, we cannot implement a good herd health management. The vaccination protocols, good vaccination protocols, eradication programs, if possible, and the biosecurity, better biosecurity, including an effective disinfection. And this is my last very important statement. We should focus on the cost optimization instead of cost cutting. What does it mean? The veterinarians are not cost makers. Yes, you have to pay to the veterinarians for their services, but if you employ, or if you have a contract with a good veterinarian who can significantly improve the herd health management on the farm, it will yield a huge, it will increase greatly the profitability of the farm. So the investment in a good herd health management program, a good veterinarian implementing a herd health management program is a very, very good investment. The return on investment, the ROI is around 300%, 300%, and it's a legal yield, legal one. And this is my last slide. I like this quote. Thomas Alva Edison said this: when you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this, you haven't. That's why he was one of the greatest inventors of the mankind. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Are there any questions? Then please raise your hand or write it in chat.
Oh. Oh, I found it.
There is a question, maybe it's a written question.
Yes.
Yeah, in the chat.
Yes, okay.
Laszlo, can you see it or should I read
yes,
it?
Yes, I can see. Yes, I read it loud. Yes, in table 1, the title had results of a study on Hungarian making. Is this the same as Hungarian Frisian? Yes, it's a Holstein Frisian. No, it's not Hungarian Frisian. It's Holstein Frisian. It's Holstein Frisian. Yes, it's an important question. So all the studies which were made here in Hungary, or all the surveys. We surveyed Holstein Friesen dairy cattle farms, not the Hungarian spotted or the Hungarian Simmental, Holstein Friesen. If so, does it warrant to have some similar information in relation to other exotic dairy breeds in Hungary? No, unfortunately, we have no. We have no, because more than 95% of the Hungarian milk production comes from Holstein Friesen dairy cattle production. That's why we focused on this breed only, and this is the dominating breed all over the world globally. That's why we focused on this breed exclusively. Yes. Another question, mastitis is a sign of a complex health problem. Yes, I agree with this. What other diseases are related to mastitis? Yes, this is a very good question. Many metabolic diseases are related to the mastitis. Most of the metabolic diseases can cause mastitis, for example. As regards to the contagious diseases, some of them, as it is a complex problem, if we have a problem with feeding, the quality of feeding, of course, I think the first sign is gonna be the deteriorated reproductive performance, but the second sign, or in parallel, the subclinical mastitis. And if the feeding, if we have a serious problem with feeding, even the clinical mastitis cases can appear shortly after the problem arose. Hi, Prof. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask, what are the regulations around the use of antibiotics on the treatment of mastitis? It's a very, very actual issue. Of course, only veterinarians can apply the other infusions containing antibiotics. Only veterinarians or farm workers under veterinary supervision. So the veterinarian should be there. Plus, all the antibiotics can be bought through recipe prescription. So a veterinarian should prescribe the antibiotics which can be used on the farms. Plus, the veterinarians are obliged to do a postgraduate course and to have a successful exam after attending this course, which is called prudent antimicrobial use. Prudent use of antimicrobials or prudent use of antibiotics. So this is obligatory, and if you got the certificate, it's gonna be valid for 5 years, and you have to renew it after the 5 years. Otherwise, you cannot prescribe any antimicrobials, antibiotics for food-producing animals. So these are the rules, obligatory rules today. Of course, if you are a responsible veterinarian, at least quarterly, you should get the antimicrobial resistance tests done based on the milk samples from the farm. But this is just a recommendation, still a recommendation. Yes. Do you know of permanent herd health monitoring programs in place in Hungary? What do you mean by this? Obligatory or voluntary? Obligatory or eradication program? Voluntary, yes. For example, yes, as regards to mastitis, to reduce the mastitis cases caused by Staphylococcus aureus, many farms did that. Especially it was very common 10-15 years ago. Today, Prototheca zoofi against Prototheca zoofi, which is an algae and cause mastitis as well. Yes, to improve the reproduction, there are many programs usually using hormones. Off-sync, pref-sync, res-sync, a lot of programs are usually applied today. Plus, the use of sex semen is quite prevalent today to improve the reproductive parameters. As regards to eradication programs, obligatory eradication programs are the following: leukosis, infectious bovine rhinotracheitis, and yes, these are the obligatory eradication programs, and the jure, according to the law, the brucellosis as well. We are free of tuberculosis. We are free of tuberculosis in the European Union. So we just have to monitor the freedom from this bacterium. Plus, on some dairy cattle farms, they are trying to eradicate. They are trying to apply eradication programs for BVD and in a very limited number for paratuberculosis, because in Western and Northern Europe, many states are already free of these two diseases. And if you want to sell, for example, breeding heifers, replacement heifers, or any other live animals, this is an obligatory provision to be free of these two diseases. Hello, on your graphs, it's interesting for me that the use of antibiotics in lameness is 50% higher than respiratory diseases, meaning lameness is mostly caused by bacterial infection. This is a very good question. They try to treat the lameness, and this is the easiest way from a practical point of view to do something. To be honest, there is no representative survey on what pathogens causing the lameness here in the Hungarian herds mostly. Of course, usually it's a multifactorial disease, so some kind of bacteria should be there. And this is the easiest way. This is the easiest way because against viruses and the other pathogens or to improve the housing conditions, Sometimes it's impossible or requires much more investment. So this is the easiest way, I mean, to use antibiotics and to reduce the incidence, the prevalence of lameness to a acceptable level. That's why. There was an indication of 70 kilogram more milk realized per year after successful calculated in relation to the current lactation, where there was the mastitis case. Or can the result be assumed prospective, indicating that such recovery cows can gain 70 kilogram more milk in their subsequent lactation? So this is a very good question again. Yes, it was a calculation. How many kilograms more milk, extra milk, do we need to cover the other HAZRAC cost? Of course, if the mastitis case was treated successfully, we can accept a higher lactational milk production in the subsequent lactations, in the forthcoming lactation, but we did not research this. Thank you. The cost of one single open day was around €1.5 to €3. Yes, some producers would prefer to do reattempt of insemination. However, this increased the number of non-productive days. In your experience, to what leverage can producers go in order to avoid the more osteolysis from non-productive days, but at the same time have the ability of the cow to recover the cost incurred due to open days? Yes, this is also a very practical question. I think in practice, many times they try to get the cows conceived for 5 times, even for 5 or 6 times. Based on the calculation, I think over 3 times. That after 3 insemination, if the cow doesn't get conceived, this is the turning point. This is the turning point as regards to the cost. So that's why I would advise this, but of course depends on the cow as well, because the high producing, high performing cows, it could be 4 or even 5. So it depends on the cow, but on an average, I would say after 3-4 inseminations, it's not worth it to do longer or more. Hi, Prof. Which pathogens are commonly implicated in mastitis cases? Are there what is that? And why emerging or antibiotics? Are there any emerging or antibiotics? Yes, it's changing. Of course, usually the so-called environmental pathogens causing most of the mastitis cases, Streptococcus and different kind of staphylococci. The E. coli on some farms is still a problem. Unfortunately, the E. coli can cause the death of the cow. That's why, from a financial point of view, it is of a great importance. New pathogens, for example, Mycoplasma bovis, so its prevalence is increasing. Antibiotics. Yeah, how to say? According to the categorizations, we have 4 categories, and many times category 3 antibiotics are still used. So different kinds of cephalosporins to treat the mastitis cases, which is a problem from antimicrobial resistance point of view, which is a big problem. So but unfortunately, on the Hungarian market, the veterinary practitioners complain about that there are no enough available other infusions, licensed other infusions to choose and to treat the mastitis cases successfully. That's why they have to choose sometimes the cephalosporins, or many times the cephalosporins, unfortunately. Antimicrobial resistance strains of concern. Yes, that's the same problem. Thanks for my 3 questions. Satisfied. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Yeah. Oh, sorry. This is yes.
So if I were to convert this.
Sorry. Okay, I cannot see more. I hope I answered all the questions raised by the participants.
Yes, there are no more questions as I see, but there were several questions, so this presentation was very popular.
Okay, I'm happy
Yeah.
to hear this.
It was really interesting and really interesting questions.
Oh,
So if there are no more questions, I would thank you very much for your interesting presentation and wish you all a nice day.
thank you very much for the invitation. I wish the same to you all.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.